welcome to What Will the World Look Like Post-COVID? So we've got Dr. Jessica Borger and Viana, and it'll be chaired by Elizabeth, who is Women in STEM's founding president. So if you've not been to any of the Women in STEM Connect events before, just a quick introduction. We created this at the start of summer as a way to bring everyone, women in STEM together across the world, and just have a space to have a community and expand your network and discuss the sort of recent events that have been going on. So I think we're over halfway through the summer now, had quite a few successful events. So yeah, Women in STEM Connect is run by the Edinburgh University Women in STEM Society. Our goals are to promote, support and connect women in STEM. We do this for a variety of events. Yeah, so I'll just get, if you want to keep up to date with us and all the upcoming events, we're on social media, and we're also on YouTube now for the Women in STEM Connect virtual events. So if you missed any of the previous ones, they're on YouTube and on our social media, so you can go check them out. And yeah, so we'll just get started. I'll let Elizabeth introduce herself and the panelists. So Elizabeth, do you want to go?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks, Sarah. Yeah, as Sarah mentioned, I'm Elizabeth. And yeah, I was the founding president of Women in STEM, so it's very nice to work alongside the committee now and see how much the society has grown since then. I'm very excited for the event today. So we have Viana, Maya, and Dr. Jessica Borger. And I think we'll just start off by giving them a chance to explain what they do and who they are.
Who's going first?
You go, Jess.
Want me to go?
Yeah.
I'm Jess. Hello, everyone. I'll just keep it really brief. So I'm up to about 6 months ago. I was a postdoctoral researcher. So I've actually been researching at the University of Edinburgh, which is why I was so chuffed by this invitation, because I have wonderful memories of the University of Edinburgh. And I was also a research fellow at Monash University as well. So I have about 12 years of experience of that. And I'm an immunologist, so I'm very interested in really knowing how the immune system works, and in particular a cell type called T cells. So they're the ones that fight infections such as viral infections and cancer. So I'm really interested to know how those T cells work and how we can make them better as immunotherapies. And then towards the end of last year, I actually moved into the education stream in academia. So I've done the research, now I'm moving into the education side of things. And I'm involved in graduate research, basically trying to make some graduate, like master's courses and PhD courses. So I've got a bit of experience in everything now in academia and the pitfalls of what's happened in COVID-19 since. So I've got lots to say.
Hey. I'm Viana Maya, and I am the founder of Prespect. So Prespect is an employability coaching that currently is working with marginalized individuals, ethnic minority groups, variety, mostly women at the moment. And we're funded by the Scottish Government and the Hunter Foundation. I've also just graduating from Edinburgh Napier University studying web design and development. I have a background in acting and performance and science communication. And I'm bringing in all these tools and experience to really, I mean, my passion is really empowering women to just jump in and grab a hold of whatever they want to do and get in there. And again, invitation to come onto this is great, because I really believe that there's a way that technology can be used to really improve employment or employment opportunity for all. So yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Great. And so another question for both of you, kind of piggybacking off of that, what has your experience been during coronavirus and this quarantine period, and how has this affected your work and those around you?
Shall I jump in there, Jess?
We can both jump in, but you can go first.
So for us, especially with Prespect, so Prespect I started while still at university, and I expected it to be a slow process in terms of employability, what I needed to do, because I used to run live workshops in Edinburgh and Glasgow. But then once COVID hit, it's suddenly we had to, we're already digital in terms of the services, but we really had to not only bring the people that we were supporting along to adapt to that remote working, digital access, online sessions. We really had to be mindful and aware that not everybody had access to all the fantastic tools and gadgets that we've got in terms of working remotely. And again, the change for us was noticing the sort of the mental health, the mindful, just that people weren't focused on employment now. It was focused on survival for some. we're going to dive into it, but it was really adapting herself, listening, pause, but the change was rapid. It was a weekly, it was a daily focus, and just really, really fast. So now I'm at a good place where I can come in and join in and have these conversations, where before I don't think I even had the time to breathe. And also managing homeschooling and making sure that the family were all, you know, adapting well to this strange time.
Yeah, I think survival is very correct in what you wanted to say. I think my child wants to say goodnight to me. Do you want to say goodnight? Okay, goodnight. Do you want to quickly? Sorry, this is part of the deal, right? Now you want to say hello? There you go. This is what happens now. We have children involved in every aspect of our work. There we go. Good night. But that's part of it, right? Where I think in academia, everyone is surviving, whether you're a researcher or education. None of us have recovered yet. You know, it's been hard because the universities lost all their money. You know, they really, from enrollments, money's gone. So the money from education that supports the research is gone. So there were job freezes, there were job losses. There are now in Melbourne, there are even more job losses because we're in our second lockdown. We came out of a lockdown and now in Australia, we're in the second lockdown in Melbourne. So it's becoming that there's also geographical divides happening within one country as well that we're going to be fighting against. So as academic researchers, you apply for grants, you need, you need preliminary data, you need those sort of things. But when you're in a lockdown and social distancing, so you can't even come into your lab and there are lab closures, you're getting behind in your career, you know, and you can't publish either because you're not getting that data. And then educators in academia have had to deal with turning everything online. You know, I watched, my peers go lose their minds basically because they've had to, all the things that they've been doing for years, put everything online and almost instantly. And then one minute get told, we might go back to face-to-face in a few weeks. Oh no, we've got another lockdown. You're back into that situation again. So, and then you've had to balance children. And I think the people that have been hardest hit have been the younger, more junior sort of women because they have the younger families that have 6-year-olds and we entire time because they can't direct themselves in home education. So there's been a lot of, I think, the younger, early career researchers really, and the female ones in the field I'm in. So that's what I've seen. And it's really the mental load that's attached with all of that as well. That's, put great pressure on everyone, including myself. There've been days you cry, you laugh, you cry, you laugh. You're on this constant roller coaster of emotions and it's not healthy.
Yeah, and I think you both kind of touched on this a little bit, but the next question I wanted to ask you was about the effects on mental health from this crisis and whether, what those effects have been and whether you both think that it's something that we're talking about enough because obviously, news of the public health crisis and the economic crisis are kind of taking precedent over this. So I wanted to see what your thoughts were on the mental health crisis as well.
I'll speak from academia, from the people that work in. For the students, there's a lot of support out there for mental health, the mental load and, the changes that it's students. But I feel for the educators and the researchers, not much is sent to us, not much is communicated to us. Like, are you okay? It's the whole are you okay thing. The mental load is immense, right? Because we're high achievers. We used to project managing many things and now we have to project homeschooling on top of things and other things. And the mental load is just exhausting. It's overwhelming. I've definitely suffered from it a lot. And it would be not, I'm still not aware of what resources are out there, how we can help the situation. It's not discussed. And the thing is, we also are suffering economic things. My husband went down to part-time work. He almost lost his job. So on top of the changes in your workload, which are immense, you also have your own economic problems. And, I've got a mother who's 80 that lives with me, so I'm scared to death she might get COVID. So you have all the problems that are there, but then your work has just changed incrementally and you're meant to just snap into it and be able to deal with it and deal with homeschooling and everything else thrown at you. And it's exhausting. It's just purely exhausting. And I think we've all got fatigue, quite honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Jess, because I've started to put on place mental health a practice for myself because I found I was just going. And again, I'm in but for me, it's employability. We're supporting people, so you're putting people first. And as you were saying, jobs were disappearing or are disappearing. A lot of the people that I support do not have the tech skills required to adapt and then get into remote work opportunities. So I was doing all of that, thinking about people. And then obviously for us, when the protest started and, race issue started presenting itself, the effect of COVID Black and ethnic minority group, I found the month of June, I can actually pinpoint the month of June for me was the worst month in terms of my own well-being. So I've really started to, and allowing myself and not feeling guilty. And I think that's the problem that we're not talking enough about, because some of us are working, are doing stuff. And as you're saying, Jess, we're as educators having to adapt ourselves quickly to become online. We're not given the space to pause and stop and look after ourselves. We're on the go. We're on the go. What's the government saying now? What do we do? How do we adapt? We're not having that space, and I think there's not really enough support for everyone when it comes to well-being. There's focus on young people. There's folks, there seems to be pocket of focus, whereas I think a situation like this should invite a focus for everyone, working or not, to have that well-being support. How do we do that? Again, it's another conversation. But for us, it's finding resources and sharing it. That's how I've been dealing with it, really.
Yeah, thank you for kind of sharing your experiences and being candid about it as well. And so to move on to another issue, a question for you, Jess. What are the biggest risks that we face because of the pandemic with regards to gender equality? So you wrote an article about this.
Can I just answer everything?
Yeah, and this is obviously just like another issue that's building up on all the issues. So
no, it's really a big thing, and that's the thing. I'm going to talk from academia, right? Because that's all I've known for many, many years. But really, in the last few decades, a lot has been done to try and bring gender equality to academia. We're trying our hardest to have equal awarding of grants to female versus men, to get equal amount of women presenting at conferences than men, equal number of women on committees, equal number of female authors, first authors or last authors, really trying to increase the presence of women and increase the equality of women in every forum that we can. But the problem is, the minute COVID happened, all of this stopped. And it's for some of the reasons I mentioned before, is because the women that need the publications, the people that need the publications, that need the grants to keep moving up in their career, are generally the junior researchers. The senior ones, they've made their mark. They probably have tenure. They can keep going. And a lot of them are the males, right? Senior males. We know that scissor graph that women tend to leave at that very level B, where they're starting to have families because they just can't compete. So now that we're putting even more pressure on, you need these papers, you need these grants, you need to be at committees, yet we're now homeschooling, and a lot of us are probably part-time anyway because we have carers. So already we're behind the 8 ball. We were trying to make those measures to make sure we could be equal, but now we've got added pressures on us and added requirements of us, of our workloads, that we're going to get even further back in putting in those grants. I know we had grant season here where we had to apply for grants right when COVID hit. So people were trying to maintain their workload, homeschooling, and then trying to write grants. And I know women that couldn't get their grants in. So then they might not have a job next year. And the same with trying to generate data for publications or data for grants. If your labs are closed due to social distancing and lockdown, you're not going to generate data to get the papers, to get the grants, and there goes your career again. Whereas bigger labs, ones that are, run by more senior people, they have a lot of data, they can write a few papers, they can survive. But it's really those junior people again, the ECRs, and generally the women, because they do most of the, men as well. Men are suffering too. I'm not trying to say this is a women only issue, but it is impacting more women. And again, all of these sort of things are going to stop gender equality, because again, unless the funding bodies, the government, societies, all these people come to help and to find mitigation so women can maintain their paper records, their grant applications, all those, all the forward motions we were making in gender equality are all going to take a step back again, because you're going to lose women. At the end of this year, funding in Australia is dire, and we're going to lose a lot of women ECRs, I believe.
Wow. And a question for...
And I think Australia and UK are very similar in this, I have to say, because I think governments support the universities a lot more in Europe, but I think America, the UK and Australia, we're so supported by student enrollments that has such a massive knock-on effect to educators and researchers. So yeah, it's global to a degree.
Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, it's crazy. And Viana, how have the recent effects affected your work specifically and the people that you work with, the confidence of the women that you work with?
It's been, so we decided to early on to really bring people in together to first work on the well-being. So we had to take a step back. So we really adapted ourselves. The confidence obviously was very, very low at the beginning. So we put in a lot of practice in terms of building resilience, in terms of analyzing the economy, analyzing the industry that they're interested in working in, and then adapting themselves to that. So we've brought in a lot of online learning. You know, for some, we've got, for example, a person in our group, a woman in our group who is now getting into coding. So she's got a mentor and she's starting at the basics. You know, we've got her a book of girls who can code just for her to get into that. But really it's been about adapting, building resilience. And again, being aware of all the stuff that Jess was saying there, that the lack of opportunity, and finding out there's now more research about how COVID is affecting women, how COVID is affecting women, especially women in the Black and ethnic minority groups. And then obviously when it comes to opportunity for work, most are in the sectors where the jobs are disappearing. So for us, is bringing in that research and that adaptability. So what can you do when these things are happening? And really, it's been really a case of looking at the individual. For us, is very much personalized. Looking at the individuals, what do they need? Put that well-being in place, but also support them in adaptability and resilience. So the confidence is getting better because we're looking at self-employment as well. Opportunities, what can we do with what's happening now and the opportunities that are there? So trying to maintain positive in awareness of the reality that we're in. But yeah, so at the beginning, the confidence was really, really low, but we're getting back on a good place. But then we don't know if we have a second wave where that's going to go. So that's where the resilience comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Viana, can I ask a question, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Am I allowed to?
Yes.
Viana?
Yeah,
but I'm just, do you think, from what you're saying, mentoring is a really big thing at the moment that women need? Do you,
It's really,
right?
I cannot stress that enough. And something that I would like to suggest for everyone, for us here as a group, is almost building our own community of mentors. So I was going to even say with Jess there, I would suggest, you know, researchers get together. If you can help each other to write those forms, get together, write those forms, you know, support each other. But mentoring is so, so important. And we've found the difference between, you know, people are coming to us now that if they'd come at the beginning, they would have been in a better place, in that we allow people to talk about what's going on, like we're having this conversation, really be honest about what they're facing. And then we look at what can we do together, and then what can we put in front of the government and say, this is what's happening. This is what's affecting people. We've got the broader news, but this, when you look at it from a local perspective, a mentoring, so important. If you can get a mentor, everybody's here sharing a LinkedIn, reach out to somebody, start connecting with people. I highly, highly recommend it.
And another question for both of you, kind of going off of that, what have your support networks looked like throughout this crisis, and how important have they been?
Professional or personal?
I think both, because I think, yeah, there's just an overlap of everything now, really. So
I'll say personally, I have such a good gang of female friends that we have kept each other on the same, you know, really kept each other motivated, and we've been there through the tears and through whatever, you know, just daily messages, just showing that you care about people has been huge for me. I think I've had a huge amount of support there. I think professionally, I have a great boss who has definitely understood my position. You know, she understands the working from home and the homeschool. So I've been very lucky in having a good boss that understands the bigger picture. But I think in the greater picture of academia, there hasn't been much. There's not many affirmative messages. There's not much. Here's some avenues that we can help you in your role, whether you're a researcher or an educator. You don't hear the positives. You just hear negatives. Job losses, job losses, job losses. I have to admit, yeah, the overall support at work, not huge at all.
I've been very lucky in that personally, I've got a good group of people around me. Professionally, again, with Prespect is part of, in partnership with AI Employability, and obviously the funding with the Scottish Government, we've been there's a group of us that are funded by the SIP fund, and we've been meeting regularly, having these honest conversations, because I think it's really important to being able to say, this is my week today, I don't know if I can handle this, but this is what's going on, and having that wave of support. So we've been very lucky in that sort of a grassroots of social enterprise and organizations supporting really in the low ground level, but we've built up a great support system. But for me personally, I've also been seeking women group elsewhere of other women that are doing similar things to me, especially women in tech. How do we talk about what we're doing? How do we support? What can we do next? So it's been really, there's been an energy of what can we do next? How do we support each other? How do we build back? How do we, like Jess was saying, there's a lot of negative news, but finding spaces where we can also look at the opportunity has helped. Like I was saying, July was just full of negative, but finding those spaces and those groups has really, really helped. And also having the family, so not to burden them too much with work stuff, because that can be a bit much as well for them.
And another question for both of you now, with a lot of people saying that working from home is kind of going to become the new normal, and obviously, as you mentioned, Jess, in Melbourne, things going back to down. So how do you feel about this new normal, and do you think that this is something that's going to happen, more people working from home and choosing to do that?
Look, I think in academia, in a way, we're very lucky because we're quite flexible. Our jobs have always been quite flexible. We work the hours we sort of choose to work. So you might have days where you do 16 hours, but other days where you do 5. So I think the position I'm in at the moment, where I can work from home and I can base my work around my child's schoolwork, that sort of thing, that's a good thing. I would prefer to do flexible working from home with my child at school, so I can actually do work during normal hours and not 4:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night, because that's what some of us are doing now to maintain it. But I also know the problems that have been discussed about working from home as well. I think if it's on a full-time basis, people sort of start to think you're accessible at any time because you're at home. Right? You're at home, you should be working. So I can call you whenever I feel like it, and you should be answering the phone, or you should be answering emails because you're at home. So I think you start to fall into those, not everyone, but some employers will start to fall into those traps. But working from home as well, you can access meetings one after another, I suppose, rather than traveling to meetings. You are more accessible to meetings. You can be more accessible maybe to one-day seminars where you can pop in and out. So there are positives, but I think from some of the employers' point of views, especially in academia, I think it's still a bit of an old-fashioned thing where presence means something. They want to see you. They want to see you working in the lab, or they want to see you in your office being productive. So I think some bosses are quite reactive to the fact, well, if you're at home, what are you doing? You're probably watching TV. But of course, we all have jobs to do, and we're all high achievers, and we will do those jobs. But it's that very traditional sort of feel, and that can put pressure on you as well, working from home, thinking that maybe you're not being trusted per se, or... Yeah, so there's positive and negatives.
Yeah,
I think.
Definitely. There's a lot. I think for us, just going on from my own experience of it, whereas it was 24/7 almost, it felt like that. But it's really about putting in those systems in place. There are going to be people, again, talking from employability and the group that I work with, there are people who can't do this where they can just sit in the room and work from home, whereas, some people are sharing living rooms with their kids, their family, their parents, all sorts of people in there. So again, this new normal, it needs to be something that we think about. How do we make it work for everyone? How do we make it so that these opportunities, I know people that don't apply for certain jobs that are remote because they feel like they wouldn't be able to do the work. They don't have the software, they don't have the broadband, they don't have the they want the support. They want to actually be in an office or somewhere where they can be trained properly, where they can have that support system. So again, I think as employers, what they need to think about, this is going to be the new normal. What systems you have in place that will support people, that will make sure that you have those clock off time. I have 2 people that work with me. I make sure that, you clock off at your time. If they send me an email at 7 p.m. and say, why are you working at 7 p.m.? You have to be that kind of employer where you are putting in healthy systems for your employee to make sure that they know that, yes, it might be full time, but your hours are your hours. Let me know what you're doing, you know, keep a track of it somehow, but there has to be trust as well. As Jess was saying, you're going to have people that want to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, when you're doing it. There has to be trust. And you also have to be able to adapt and understand the struggles for people with children. You know, some days the little one, she's very good, and some days she wants to come in and join in. I let people know in advance that we have somebody in the corner here. You might hear a little bit of, you know, Teletubbies or something in the side. Is really just, again, letting the employees or potential employees know what are your systems, how are you supporting people working remotely. But again, I think the new normal kind of makes it a little bit scary for people. So it's, yeah, systems and support.
Can I add to what Viana, she just made me think of something as well. You know, you're saying some people want to go in to get that support or that formal training. And I think a thing I miss by not going into work as well is sort of, you miss seeing your networks and seeing the people you might just have a quick coffee with, or people you might pop in and see in the office. And they're important for, you know, for sponsorship, for networking, for making collaborations, just being able to pop in on someone, right? And just seeing them. And you don't have that interaction seen at home, you know, because you have to make your meeting time, or you just send a text, and it becomes very impersonal. And I think those personal interactions really, I need them at work, especially to do my job, I think. And it probably sounds from a lot of the people you work with as well, Viana.
Just having that space to bounce ideas. So we've started putting in, so when we've for example, I've got 3 people now who are in work, and one of them, her work started at the height of the lockdown. So we put in a system in there where we were bouncing ideas, because she's somebody who needs that bounce ideas space, just to make it natural for her, rather than having this as a set time. Sometimes I say, you know, look, I'm free at this time, let's get together and have a chat. And I know I personally miss walking, you know, just walking is how I find it sort of engage my ideas and whatnot. But it's really being able to allow people that they need the adapting time, instead of it just being a switch in, okay, this is the new normal, this is how we're going to do it. We have to be able to allow people these conversations of how comfortable are you at working from home? What's remote working like for you? Even having a remote working induction day or something, you know, we've seen that advert by Apple, it's all right, about remote working, but I think bringing in that community, this is how we do remote working, this is who meets so-and-so, whatever, make it interesting, make it fun, don't make it so rigid. I mean, put some life into it, really, but really the support and trust has to be there, otherwise it's not going to work. You know, again, I think mostly it will be women deselecting themselves, because if you don't know that your kids can come running in, you're not going to want to do this.
It's true, you've made a point. No one's actually told me how you're meant to remote work. Do you mean we've just been thrown into it? Take your stuff home, switch on your computer, now work from home. But no, there probably are better ways to do it than what I've been doing and what our team's been doing, but no one's taught us how we should. No
one's done it. Yeah. You know, I've actually found it shocking. So for us, we're doing our reboot session in employability, and we're bringing in remote working for people, talking about, you know, the different things that happen, because no one's talking about it. So how do you expect people to apply for your organization? And they don't even know how it goes. You know, you might be the most funnest employer ever. You might make the process easy, but if people are seeing it as this really rigid thing, it's just I think the point you made it, just it was that thing of suddenly we're expected to adapt, especially those that are in education, where we're just expected to do it without the focus of how do we do it. I've learned a lot of tools in the time that now, you know, I've taken it for granted, but the tools that I've been using, Zoom, Meet, I mean, I could list them all and you'll see them, but no one's actually said, okay, this is how we do it. This is the things you could use to make it easy for you, bring you in, you know, that's missing. The human approach is missing.
100%.
And a question again for both of you, how do you think that COVID will change the job landscape? So both, you know, jobs and also research and academia, how will it change for students and graduates that are preparing to go into full-time work now or are preparing to graduate?
I'm worried for the students this year and probably next year, you know, especially the science. So the science I'm from is immunology. You know, it's very, you have to be in a lab, you have to learn technical skills, you know, communication skills as well, but it's very technical based, you need results. And, you know, most of our honours year, the students haven't been able to be in the labs, and we have smaller research projects where they haven't been able to be in the labs. They're not, even at the universities, the undergraduate tutorial or the workshops and things where they're meant to be in labs, they're not there. They're not learning this. They're watching it for 5 hours on TV. You know, that's not learning skills. And I think for the next year or two, the students that are going to come out, and this is no offense to the students, but they have not received the right training. And that's a worry for a knock-on effect for what sort of scientists they'll become. I hope to God that they'll get good training in their jobs or whatever they go on to do. But there's a worry that they have not received the same training I received or the students a few years ago received. There's going to be a very big difference in how they perceive science and their roles in science, and having the skills to do what they want to do or to go into postgraduate studies. The next few years are really going to change those particular people and how they become scientists, I suppose. And it's a worry. There's nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. You know, we should stop all enrollments, but a university is not going to stop doing that, right? Because we've already lost about 40% of our enrollments because we're so heavily reliant on international students in Australia. So they still need to get as many enrollments as they can. They're just changing how things are taught, but certain things can't be taught over the internet. It's just that simple. So I do worry for students. And researchers is a whole different story, but for students, I do worry at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose for me as a career coach is really, I would encourage students now is keeping an eye on your industry. If there's any opportunity, as Jess was saying, especially for industry that require practical training, if there's any organizations that are open to bringing in people for weekly, I don't know, something, if they're going to organize, again, it's a shame for companies, they seem to they're going to have to take on that load of bringing people up to speed somehow. Yeah. And that then requires the government to actually support that, because I don't think there's been enough support when it comes to science. There's not been, because science is what we need.
Right. Do you want scientists to find a vaccine for you? Would you like that? You have to give money.
Pump some money in there. So there's a lot of focus on the kind of stuff that's opened up, you know, pubs and whatnot. And we're just thinking, right, we need the focus to go on the area, the industry that's actually going to create the thing that's going to help us survive this. But I could rant all day. Yeah. But I would say for students is look at your industry. What area could you get into? It's about that adaptability. What areas could you get into in terms of work now? And then finding routes back into getting that practical. If universities start to be practical, maybe universities will have to allow space for people to come back and do those practical work so they can become the scientists that we need for the future. But it's really about keeping track. So this is the advice I always give to people in our group. Is really about keeping an eye on your industry, keeping an eye on the economy, business news, read everything that is not just focus on your own, find out what's happening around you, and then make decisions from there. Mm-hmm. And again, I would say create opportunities to showcase your knowledge. So for example, this is great coming on here. I always encourage people to either create their own websites on LinkedIn, show your voice, share your knowledge, share your skills so you are part of the discussion. So that's another way of making sure that women are heard, making sure that your knowledge is heard and seen. So create platforms like this, but start talking more about what you do, what you can do. But really keeping an eye on your industry, keeping track what opportunities are there and how can you get in so that when other stuff open up, you can be a part of that too.
Mm-hmm. That's really good advice. Thank you. And a question for Viana. I think you might have touched on this very briefly before, but how exactly has this crisis impacted the BAME community differently? And what steps can employers take to support their BAME staff and recruit a more diverse workforce?
I think for BAME, especially for employers, I would say don't stop your diversity and inclusion work, because I think what happened as part of the work that I do with AI is working with organizations in terms of understanding the diversity and inclusion, understanding how they can reach, retain and engage ethnic minority groups. And then obviously when COVID happened, that work stopped. And then we all know in the news the effect that's had on the Black and ethnic minority groups, and the effect that's had in terms of employment, because the sectors and industry that are affected for Black and ethnic minority groups are in the sectors where, you know, retail, hospitality, the care industry. I think now it's about really opening up opportunities, about really being transparent for employers, transparent about your recruitment processes. What are you doing to ensure that, you know, there's safety for BAME and ethnic minority groups in your organizations? And then again, it's very difficult because we don't really know what jobs or opportunities are out there yet. For me, as a technology digital person, I'm always encouraging the group, the Black and ethnic minority group that I work with, to start looking into the tech industry. Again, when people think tech, they're thinking programming languages, all coding, all sorts of things. There are different areas within the tech industry that people can get into. So it's about adapting your skills, your transferable skills. It's about, again, I research, you know, what's going on, what's happening, what opportunities are there? What opportunities are there to upskill, for example? We provide a bit of funding to support people to access online learning. And again, we support with that. We bring in, you know, sessions where we work with people, map them, and then support them to move forward. We've had great successes, even during the lockdown, where people have been able to adapt themselves and get into opportunities that they can do. But I think for employers is engage with organizations like ourselves, engage with the community, let them know, what are you doing? You know, what's going on? And again, that honesty of, you may not have opportunities now, but what's post-COVID going to look like for you? What skills are you going to be needing in your organization so that people can adapt? Because we can't know, you know, same for the people in here, the students in here, you don't know what employers need. You could be changing and adapting yourself, but if you don't know what they want, again, that's when a barrier comes in. Once they start recruiting and it's completely different, you're having to adapt quickly. So start to share the knowledge now, employers, if you're here and listening. Share the knowledge with us, share what do you need, and then people can adapt from there. It's really that communication that I would encourage. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And just to piggyback off that question, and this is for both of you, this adaptability and the knowledge sharing that you previously mentioned, you know, going out on LinkedIn or talking about your skills, how do you think that's harder for women because of, you know, some of the stereotypical confidence issues that women have, talking about themselves, putting themselves out there? Yeah, so how do you think that plays into it?
I'll jump in here because I feel, you know, I've not always been somebody who's come up here and have a chat. I think for me personally, performance has helped, coming from an acting background, but also being aware, as I've especially getting into the tech industry, I've noticed and been told that, you know, my chances of getting into employment is not going to be great. I might have this degree. So being aware of my reality, and then for me is actually was create something for myself. And in creating something for myself, I have to be able to talk about it. And I think starting from here, as students, you've got a great platform where you're talking, you're sharing, you're showcasing yourself. Be a part of that. You know, share that on LinkedIn, share your opinion. So start slowly, sometimes even just listening on LinkedIn. Start slowly. You don't need to just jump in and start a YouTube channel tomorrow. It's really about looking out there, seeing what are people doing, create your network of opinion people, you know, and start to talk about it, discuss if there's anything that you want to share it together and support each other, right? If somebody's posts something, straight in their LinkedIn, like it, share it. It's really about building that confidence. That's where confidence comes in. When other people are also recognizing what you're saying, when other people are jumping in their support. So start supporting each other first. And then as your confidence build, that's when you start looking at building your own platform, if that's necessary. I mean, this is my mindset is always that if I'm not going to have the opportunity, can I create it for myself? And I think this is something that women need to get into, is that really we have a lot to share, but it's almost waiting for permission before you do something. You know, it's like start being your own best friend and start giving yourself that permission and do some of that sharing as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Jess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I wasn't always like this either. But I think I went to one thing because it was about, you know, how to sell, not sell yourself to the media, but how to make a presence for yourself. Because, you know, you want to be like a big fish in a small, stand out a little bit, right, to succeed in your career. If people know who you are, you have a better chance of succeeding. It's that simple, especially in something as competitive as academia. But he brought on the thing about imposter syndrome, and so many women suffer from that in academia. And I personally think a big part of that is because who are our role models? All these white male scientists, right? Senior white males. That's all we get barraged with, because that's who's on those upper levels. So it takes a lot of guts to have a voice, to stand up to those people, and not stand up, but just to participate in conversations with those people, right? Because they're the leaders and the majority are male. That's just how life worked out, you know. And there are good female role models, and I have a lot of them, and I've you know, I harass women to become my mentor, basically. And that's what you have to do. You just, they're not going to come to you. You have to go to them. And that's the thing. And it does take guts. And I had a few bad job experiences when I first came back to Australia, and I was actually, I resigned from my last one because of whatever reasons, and I was actually unemployed for a month, but I took that as a chance to get out there and network. And I just went for coffees with I don't know how many different lab heads to try and find someone I would want to work with and they would want to work with me. But that gave me the confidence, because it was suddenly like, well, I am talking to all these white male scientists now, senior ones, they're fine, they're not that scary, I can do this. And then it sort of gave me the confidence that, well, if I can go out there and just, you know, ask these people for coffee, they straight away say yes. It's like, well, maybe it's not as scary as what we think it is. Maybe they do want to talk science. Maybe they do want to hear what I have to think. And I think that started me off with just going, well, what's the worst someone's going to say? No, or someone might say something rude to me on Twitter. But, you know, I think as long as you're telling the truth, as long as you're being educated and intelligent and just being yourself, be authentic, right? And people will respect that and be you know, really, you know, with reason. Even if you're a junior, you know your stuff. So just prove that you know your stuff. Have confidence in yourself and what comes out of your mouth, and you'll be fine. People respect confidence, right? They gravitate towards that. So I think just be confident in yourself, and then you will make those connections. And yeah, that's how I feel. Voice. And find other people with voices, or help those that don't have a voice. And power's in numbers, right? The louder the voice, the more people will respond to you, or have to respond to you, because there's a big noise coming out of all of you. So
yeah, it's really make the network we've got now, make that bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
You know, add self-presentation, present your work to each other in this network and share it. Because again, without the noise, you know, we could have all these reports that are coming in, but if you're not jumping in there and actually showing what you can do, so not just hearing the negatives, because we've got the negatives, it's affecting women. Women are going to, you know, it's about balancing, isn't it? It's like really, but I think you have such a strong group here that you can start making those noise. You can start promoting each other's work. If you do have, for example, some of you that managed to do any research at the moment, again, start talking about it, start sharing it. So really just, do it. My favorite quote, as I put in, is feel the fear and do it anyway. I really live by that. You know, if there's something that I need to do, I'll give it a go. And also that take accountability for whatever way it goes, learn from it, move quickly, keep doing it. And that's how I've developed. You know, I say it all the time, I am not the most mathematically minded person, but I'm in the STEM, I should say, for me, industry. I never thought I'll get into that. You know, I've been told left, right and center that what I should be doing. I'm just a bit stubborn. I'll go for the thing that I really want to go for. But just practice slowly and then go for it.
Yeah, that's really good advice again. So thank you. And I'm going to get to my final question and then hopefully open it up to everyone else so we can have a little Q&A session. And this is quite a big question. So feel free to get as specific or as general as you want, but what do you hope that the world takes away from this whole experience? And do you have any advice for people that are maybe looking for their cause? Because there are so many things going on, like so many different causes. You know, there's gender equality, public health crisis, economic crisis, a racial crisis. So how does someone even start with all of these different things going on?
Passion, empathy, start putting yourself in other people's shoes instead of being selfish, which is why we're in lockdown too in Victoria, because people, you have to start thinking of others, right? Others in their economic grief, in health, in their current workplace, all these things. You need some compassion, you need some empathy, you need to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes, which is eventually start to come out of, you know, this crisis. We need to start really just the empathy. We have to start thinking of empathy in every aspect of our life, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. You froze a little bit there, Jess. But
Yeah,
yeah, empathy.
sorry.
No, but empathy. Like without that, we can't really move forward. And I think that's what's been lacking. There's been even now that selfish reaction of what about me? How, you know, me. Really empathy. And also for people who want to jump into you know, what's happening now, is your heart. So what's drawing to you? What's really speaking to you? And how can you jump in there and really jump in wholehearted and again build it, but make sure to put that support system, because I think the wave of negativity, the wave of impact, the wave of everything that's going to happen within all of the issues that you've listed there, Elizabeth, I think people really need to also make sure to protect themselves. So look after yourself, but have empathy of others. Is to have empathy of whatever cause that you're going to go, and that purpose as well, knowing why do you want to contribute to this, why do you want to be a part of this, and then get in there. So have a conversation with yourself first and get in there. And for those that can't decide, don't feel guilty, because I think there's also that issue of pressure. I know that some people have been pressured to feel that they need to react in a certain way to certain things. That's again not helpful for people. So being allowed that time to really think about it, and then you can jump in. Yeah, so don't feel like, oh, I have to just do this because everyone around me is going for this, so I need to go for that. I think now what this pandemic has shown us is we really got the time to, when we react to something or act to something, we have to put a purpose into it, but we really have to run with empathy, because it's affecting a lot of people. So you really have to be in the shoes.
Yeah, that's great. I think some really good insight and some really good advice from both of you as well. And thank you very much for spending time with us today, this morning, this evening. Yeah, I think one of the great things about Zoom is that we're able to have people from all over the world. So Australia, the UK, it's wonderful. And I want to open it up to anyone who has any questions, any participants. If you want to put your questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, then please feel free.
Hello. So, can I ask something? Is that fine? What you said, Jess, about how it's going to be a bit trickier for people looking to do, say, their honours year this year, because that's my situation particularly. I'm studying biochemistry, and I'm so worried about not learning enough things to go out into the workplace, really. And I don't know to what extent the universities can provide us with any training, but is it going to be terribly detrimental to in terms of looking for, say, internships or like really anything to get some field training for us, given that we'll be at a disadvantage compared to other generations before us?
Yeah, look, I hope I wasn't too dramatic in what I said before. It's just I've become an educator now, so I worry about all the students. And, you know, the thing is, in Australia, we're at a different, you know, I don't know what's happening in UK universities at the moment, but I know because things have got a lot worse in Victoria, we have now cancelled all on-campus teaching till probably the end of the year, I would say. So that's been almost a whole year where students, honours students, I think some of them are still allowed to keep their research going, but for undergrads, most of that has just not happened. And I assume, so are you an undergrad or are you doing your honours year? Or, sorry, I missed.
Well, I guess maybe, so I just came back from an exchange abroad actually, and I was in Melbourne, so this is kind of an interesting situation here. But yeah, I'm studying at the University of Edinburgh, and it's really looking, they don't know what they're doing either. They said it depends on degree program, but they haven't really given any solid information.
I know, and I think that's the thing, is we all are angry at them. We're angry at them as educators, you're angry at them as students, but they've never experienced this before either, right? So they have a huge responsibility that you don't get COVID, people don't get sick because of their judgment calls. They're also trying to balance money to make sure that the universities still survive. And then they're also they are worried about your learning. They want you to come out as good scientists too. So I'm glad I'm not in those positions, right? I'm a lot lower level, so I don't have to make those calls. So it's tough, but don't worry, you will become a good scientist. You might just be on the back foot compared to someone who would have graduated 2 years ago. But if you do this for a year, you will still get a lot of theoretical knowledge. Not everything is purely lab-based, right? You'll get a good theoretical understanding. You will get some training technically, whether that is just by watching videos. So obviously you're not doing it yourself, but you will still come out with that degree. And when you start your internship, they know what you've gone through. They understand, they can help you and reach. It just might be a bit more of a complicated process for you, but you will be fine. If this is what you want to do as a job, you will learn. They will be able to help you with this. So it just might mean that it takes you 6 months longer to get on top of it than someone else. But in the scheme of life, right, that's 6 months is nothing. 6 months is really nothing by the time you retire when you're 70 or pay off your mortgage or whenever that might be. So don't worry. There's a lot of years ahead of you where you'll become a very good scientist. It's just, you'll just have a bit of a different experience to others that would have graduated, say, a year ago. But you will be fine. You'll be fine. The universities will look after you.
Right, thank you for the clarification. Sorry if that was a little grim too, but
no. Look, we're in a grim world at the moment, right? You have to find the positives, but it's scary. I can imagine it's scary for students, and that's why we were talking about mental health before. That's why there's a lot of things there to look after the students, because I can imagine going through this as a student. It's very isolating too. We talk to them through Zoom, and everyone's in their bedrooms locked away because they can't be anywhere else, and that's not the experience I had as a student. We were hanging out, at the pubs or whatever as students and talking about our lessons, or, there was a lot more interaction. We'd be meeting our lecturers, it's isolating for you guys. And I'm a very people person, and tactile person. And, it's not a great way of learning at the moment, but it probably is the future for the next few years, unfortunately. But employers will understand, and you guys will get there as well. It's just different. The world's changed, and it's not going to go back to what it was either. So we're part of a learning experience, I suppose, right? But it's a big, tough one. But you'll be fine. You will be fine.
Right, thank you.
We have one more question from Kim on the chat. What do you think employers, example universities, can implement to help women in science, especially those struggling with homeschooling?
What can they implement? I actually know Kim. So Kim is actually someone who's been very supportive, and she has done one of these things. So she has invited me to give a research seminar. Do you mean? Because we are in the same sort of demographic, women with children that we homeschool. And, and we're in these situations together. And, she's another, we were talking about this with Viana, women that network and look after each other. And that's one of the supports that can happen. It's obviously it's not an employer, but it's the networks that you make at work as well that can support each other, because that's an opportunity for me to give a seminar. So, there's small things like that can happen, and societies can do similar things as well. Make those little symposiums that, people can come and present, put that on their CV, have networking opportunities. There's things that not only universities or the government, because it's money, right? But there are other opportunities that can be made, and universities can do that too. Universities can have workshops, they can have networking events, they can have, mental health training, a few things like this. There's things that probably won't cost a lot of money that they can implement. And then to help those struggling with homeschooling, so we both work at the same university, and, they sort of said, well, you can take little chunks of your carer's leave here and there. You don't have to take one day at a time, but it still feeds into your carer's leave. We need specific COVID leave, I think, to help with homeschooling, especially because we're probably going to come in and out of these lockdowns. So there needs to be more support to women's working hours. Other institutes here in Australia have reduced their hours. So full-time is equivalent to 27 hours. instead of 37. So universities could be doing that. I think the University of Newcastle in the UK cut people down to 4 days a week for a while as well, just so we could handle those things. And, you know, we will still be efficient. It's just that pressure of maintaining 37 hours with a second lockdown, possibly a third lockdown, fourth, and homeschooling. It's unattainable. So they need to give us some relaxation of what's expected in a full-time working week, I believe. That's what universities need to look at, I think, personally. I'm not sure. I know Viana's not from academia, but I don't know, what other things do you think big institutions or government could do to help?
No, I think I definitely agree with that, because it's really allowing people the adaptability. For us, I mean, I'm working full-time, but I know that now that she's going back to school, I'm going to have to reduce my Fridays, for example, and add it on somewhere. But I have to think about those things. But I think for organizations is again, you know, putting systems in place. And I know everybody's going through the same thing. So it's now thinking of something new. How do we make sure that our employees are able to manage their homeschooling and is also able to do the work? So that means it's not realistic to expect somebody to sit in front of a screen from 9 till 5 doing that work and then also homeschool. So when do you fit that in? So maybe even negotiating timetable. You know, I need to sit from 9 until 12, for example, my child to do this, and then I'll jump into work. And then also the workload, you know, is being aware what exactly can be done and what's important, that prioritizing your workload. Again, that support with your employees. And what do you need? What can I do? Is having those conversations with people from a human point of view, rather than looking at people as you know, resources. I mean, I think that human resources really has an issue that you're looking at people as resources and not thinking about the person, the people, the human. So having those human conversations. Have the Zoom where you meet everybody that has a child. You know, have a conversations with all the parents in your organization. Find out, you know, really have that honest conversation. What is it like for you? Share tips. It could be, you know, building that network within your work where you're sharing homeschooling tips, for example. Who's the best person at maths in your organization? Maybe they could take a couple of hours and do a Zoom session with all the kids to do maths. Something, make it that interaction for employers and organization. I think that could be the same for universities. It's really about that interaction, looking at people as people, human beings, and we're all going through something that we've never gone through before. And how do we support each other? And again, if you don't have that, is building your network, maintaining that network that you had, you know, the mums, the parents at the gate of school. Can you bring that network into a Zoom space where you can all support each other and have that conversation outside of homeschooling, you know, to really support each other? So there's various ways of doing it, but I think it's that having those human conversations to support people.
Yeah, that's great. And does anyone else have any questions just before we wrap up?
I've got a quick question. Just kind of on the back of that, you obviously have kids and you're working, you said earlier, your hours have kind of changed quite dramatically because you have to try and fit around children. And I'm currently working remotely, and one of the things I kind of struggle with is separating, because I am set up in my dining room. So it's like, if I go to the kitchen, well, I'll go by my workspace and it's quite easy. And also on like top of working, I'm like organising these events. So it feels quite difficult to like kind of separate yourself from work because you're obviously in your house. And also like if you maybe go and do something for half an hour around the house, you're like, oh well, maybe I need to work half an hour later now, but it's kind of things you would be doing at work anyway. You'd have in your wee coffee breaks and everything anyway, but I think it's so much easier to guilt yourself into working later. So are you any good at actually separating your work, and have you been tips for separating it?
I
have got none. I'm literally
you work
no, I have none. I have none because I do ridiculous hours because I feel guilty that I should be doing all my hours. And then, like you said, you know, if I spend half an hour with my child, it's like I have to make up that half an hour at another time. So I'm not able to separate it yet. I have not come up with that skill. So if Viana has, I'm going
to share my planner with you. So we did a COVID lockdown planner for people, just to make sure that people don't do this, the guilt and also the burning themselves out because they feel they have to accomplish everything in a day. So I put in my little notes. So I have my hot chilies. Make sure you have your hot chilies. The 3 things that I need to do that day, and I'll do it. And you obviously have your medium. We'll share that planner with you. So you've got something to tick off, right? So you've done that. That's your day done. And having a way that you either turn off your laptop and cover it up, you know, make sure that your Netflix and stuff are elsewhere. So it's really creating that space for you where you're mentally switching off from work. Allow yourself, even if Sarah there, put in your little timer if you're going to have a little wander around your house for your coffee chat, as you would when you were working in an office space. You know, sometimes you have your 11 o'clock coffee break. Put those things in there, put those things in place. But it's really about putting those things in place at the beginning, because I knew that although we were working it felt like 24/7, I still kept my time. I'll still switch off. The latest I'll switch off will be at 7. So I literally have my thing on the wall here that tells me at 7 o'clock I need to switch off, unless it's a deadline, as you would if you're marketing or creating an event. Sometimes you might have those overtime. So I'll write down overtime. Treat it like you are in your workplace. Yeah. But it's really working through the guilt, like really allowing yourself that this is not normal. As long as you can do the work that's required for the day, and you can tick that off and say, right, I've done that, I've done a great job. Leave yourself a note for what you need to do the next day. So you've got a little note there. So if you get in front of your computer, you're about to look in there, you've got a note telling yourself, Sarah, you're doing this tomorrow. Something that stops you from getting in front of that screen. But again, that's part of your well-being, because it's just not healthy. It's not normal the way that we're working now. But you have to put those systems in place for you. But I can share our planner that we use with the group, and I think that's helped a lot of people in the group. Especially with the worry about what opportunities are there, what can I do? The planner involves everything from what you're studying, break time, you know, what you want to achieve in the week, your daily goals for the week and the days. Hope that helps. I'll share that with you.
That'd be really helpful.
I'll send the link.
I want it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's really helpful for everyone on this call, really, those tips, because I think it's something that we all struggle with for sure. I will see if anyone else has one final question. Okay, if not, I want to thank you both for taking the time to speak with us. I think it was really, really informative and nice to just hear your insights and know that, you know, we're all kind of in this together, and of course, hear the perspectives on the effects that it's having specifically on women. So yeah, it was great having you, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Join us on LinkedIn as well. Join me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, me too.
Get in there. I want to see your networking.